that are critical for Israeli maneuvers and operations. I'm talking about CENTCOM and the military commanders, I'm talking about the Pentagon, and to a degree with the White House. I agree that there is angst and there's frustration on behalf of the Israeli establishment, on behalf of the Israeli the decision-making hierarchy. But I don't think they're going to completely disregard, the administration, President Joe Biden, and his advisors. I think it's really important that we understand that the relationship between the United States and Israel surpasses any one leader or couple of leaders, and it is well more established than just the top of the chain. The coordination and the communications that take place between the hierarchy of the IDF and CENTCOM and the other elements of the United States military in the region are very, very tight. And this is going to be done properly, is my opinion.
Thank you. I'm gonna go to two different statements. So we got a statement from the president of Iran that said, based on legitimate rights and with the aim of peace and security for Iran and the region, a decisive response was given to the aggression of the Zionist regime. This action was in defense of the interests and citizens of Iran. Let Netanyahu know that Iran is not a belligerent, but it stands firmly against any threat. This is only a corner of our power. It's bad translation. Do not enter a conflict with Iran. So he's showing
Who said that,
force.
James?
The president of Iran, the current president of Iran. So that's from the Iranian side, and from the IDF, we got a Major General Herzi Halevi that said at the end of the situation, we proved our ability to prevent the enemy from achieving by combining exemplary civil behavior and a very strong air defense system. We will choose when to collect the price and prove our precise and surprising attack capability in accordance with the guidance of the political echelon. This was reported on Channel 13. Joa, with those two statements showing a different point of view and a different vision from both sides, how do you think the response will be? Will it be something that will lead to an escalation, or are we still going into that situation where there is tensions between the two countries, maybe some tits for tat, but the fighting is happening on other fronts?
Yeah, thank you, James. First off, I want to say I'm happy to hear there's no civilians that were killed. I do think I know there was a theory out there of why Iran did this now. I kind of look at it a different way.
Joe, real quick, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but there was a report of a civilian killed in the West Bank near Jericho.
Yeah, that's horrible. I never like to see civilians killed for what military people do. Um, the the way I look at this thing is, look, the head negotiator of Hamas agreed to the U.S. ceasefire agreement. 2 weeks later, he was killed. Um, Hezbollah leader was recently killed. So now no one to negotiate with a ceasefire there or for peace there. So now you have two fronts with no possible negotiation for peace. And I think Iran's like, we were attacked. We didn't retaliate. We look weak. Is this an invitation for Israel, who is sending signals that they don't want peace by killing people they need to negotiate with? Um, and let's show them that we're not as weak as they think. That's kind of the way I'm looking at it. Because why now? I don't think it's because of Kenya. There's actually reports that they kind of sold them up the river for inaction. That those reports have been kind of coming out as well. I don't know the truth to it or not. I just know that there's rumors about it. Now, in terms of in terms of Israel's retaliation, their retaliation has been the war crimes committed on October 7th. The retaliation was demolishing 80% of the residential homes in Gaza. The strike in Sheba Farms, which is not Israel, was 7,800 missile attacks into Lebanon versus 1,700. There's been nothing but escalation. And then on top of this, and this is my last point, Israel attacked the Hezbollah leader and did not tell the U.S. Iran attacks Israel, but does tell the U.S. and you start to live in this world like, who is our ally, right? Iran's telling us, projecting to us, but Israel doesn't tell us and does things that will affect the situation. You're like, where the hell are us? I don't think US is going to support a retaliation whatsoever. What Israel does from here, I think, really depends on what the sentiment's going to be from the Israeli people. Are the Israeli people going to think Netanyahu's leading us down a path where this is no longer a safe place for Jews, like he promised it would be, or are they going to be like, we were attacked by Iran, we need to go and get them now? What is their sentiment going to be? And I don't think we're going to have that sentiment right now. I think we'll hear it over the next 24 hours. And I think that's going to really dictate what's going to happen.
So, Matt, I want to go to you with the statements that we heard from the general, the major on the podium, and from Blinken. That sentiment, I think that Joe is talking about, is not really what is being represented. They want to ask them to, they want to ask them not to go forward with an attack, but at the same time, they always say that we support them defending themselves. So, what's your opinion about the U.S. politics in terms of this specific action?
Oh, you know how to push my buttons with UX politics. I think the United States does not want to see a retaliatory strike right now. Anything like any like global war started underneath Joe Biden, which is like seriously could spark out of this, is going to look bad for the Biden administration. But they'd be able to pass this off as Israel doing what Israel does, and that they have no control over Israel. And I mean, they do have a little bit of sway in things, and we've seen the U.S. government push Israel for quite some time. As far as I've mentioned it before. Before Israel went into Rafah, before Israel went to Lebanon yesterday, and all of this other crap. They have been putting pressure on Israel to try to get them to meet the current administration's policies. And I think it's a kind of a fair statement coming from the White House, because they likely are just as fed up with Netanyahu as Netanyahu's fed up with the U.S. government and their half-ass support for Israel. They say they have ironclad support, but it's just not really the case. I mean, let's be honest there. If they had ironclad support, they wouldn't be holding up, Israeli forces. So I think what it is it's politics by the White House. They're being very cautious by any statement, because obviously every single word that's going to come out of their mouth is going to be absolutely scrutinized. So they're doing their absolute best to try to say that, look, we may or may not be doing anything, because right now they don't have all of the information in. And they're definitely not going to state whether or not Israel is going to do something, because they have absolutely zero control over the Israeli government. So I think it's as fair as it can get as a statement, but it definitely is right in line what we've seen from this administration, which is kind of like passively trying to push everything off and trying to push for peace deals and peace agreements when they know that they're never really going to go through. And anybody that's been studying it, like these wars, knows that it's very highly unlikely that any sort of peace deal comes through. And they're always going to say that we're really, really close, and we're getting even closer. We've closer than we've ever been. It's like, dude, you've been close to one for 10 months now. It's just time to shut the hell up. And I think this administration does a very good job of gaslighting the world, to be perfectly honest. So that would be my statement on that. But that's my own personal statement. That's my own personal thoughts. I'm just gonna put that out there.
James, a commentary on Joe's narrative?
I want to go to Patrick first, and then I'll let you commentate. So, Patrick, welcome to the stage. It's been a while that you haven't been with us. We've seen a retaliation strike from Iran right now. We've seen what they have done, and we've heard the American representatives and the American government talking about what a potential response could be and how we are moving forward. What is your perspective as an ex-military in terms of a response from Israel, and what scale will it have into the region? So will we go into a global war due to that response? A regional war.
Yeah, first of all, I'm not former military, but I have been a war reporter and on the ground in the Middle East during the Syrian war, and also in the latter stages of the fight against ISIS in Iraq. So that's the extent of my military associations. But I think the U.S. is in a very difficult position. And I disagree with the last speaker. I think it's Matt. He said that the Biden administration's not supporting Israel. They've given them every single piece of artillery, the reconnaissance, targeting information, intelligence, special forces involved in the unfortunate raid that ended up with, I don't know how many Palestinians were killed during that attempted botched hostage rescue. But this is a political talking point in the run up to the election that the Biden administration is not supporting Israel. Every American administration supports Israel completely without any qualifications whatsoever. So let's just kind of put that one to bed. But America's in a very difficult position because they don't have very good leverage in the region like they used to, and they have to be careful because and it's interesting, Joa made a fantastic point that the United States were contacted on a type of a deconfliction line with the Iranians, and they did the same thing on April 4th, before the April 14th barrage, and they gave them forewarning, and they said, we're not going to hit any American targets. Please, be aware of what we're about to do. And that's what normative international actors do. Israel doesn't do that. So Israel's not a normative actor in the international system. And if you study international relations, you study history, normative powers, history tends to bend in their favor in the long run. So Joe made some very good points and observations on that front. America is very exposed in northeastern Syria. They're also very exposed in Iraq. The Iraqi parliament doesn't want U.S. forces in Iraq. Syria, they're occupying 25% of Syria's landmass illegally. U.S. invaded Syria in 2017 and set up shop, and they haven't left. And the reason they're in Syria, the reason they're in Iraq, the reason they're dotted all around the region, we learned on April 14th. Why? That's the security envelope that Israel requires for this type of attack. And it's very interesting because if they downplay this event, this attack, you know that more missiles landed. And you also know that Israeli retaliation might not be what some people might expect. And we're in the PR and information warfare zone in running up to an election. Anything negative is bad for the incumbent administration, okay, so in Washington. So it's gonna be used and capitalized to hurt them, Kamala Harris's campaign. We have to put politics into this because it's just a fact of life. Now, Iran is clearly ready to escalate. So let's just dispense with the debate. They're clearly ready to escalate. They've just showed that. They also issued a warning that if Israel tries to retaliate, Iran will hit back immediately with more force. They do have the ability to do that. They've demonstrated that today. Plus, Israel needs time to restock their air defenses and to make some assessments because they will have that secondary strike by Iran should they go to try to bomb Iranian cities or something like this. So this is a difficult position because the last time the United States was in this kind of bind, if you remember, if we all remember, was after the assassination of Qasem Soleimani and Abu Mahdi al-Mohandes. That was in the early part of 2020, and the retaliation from Iran was to flatten a U.S. base, Ain al-Assad base in Iraq, and I believe another facility in Erbil was hit as well. And the U.S. didn't retaliate, and because they couldn't retaliate, because the U.S.'s position in the Middle East is more valuable than Israel's vanity in this particular situation. So this is a situation that also has to be managed from a U.S. point of view. The U.S. announced, Lloyd Austin, that they're deploying more troops to the region to support Israel. Most of the people being deployed are support staff and engineering staff for the additional aircraft that are coming into the region. So it's not a whole lot in terms of troops, and really that's just kind of a performative gesture by the United States. So the United States isn't going to deploy any troops on the ground in Lebanon or anything like that. It's just really a show of support and a show of force. So Iran is ready to counterstrike if Israel decides to retaliate. And I think if you assess this, it's good for Hezbollah. It's a major boost for their morale, good for Hamas, bad for Israel politically. hugely embarrassing. The U.S. is, if you look at the official U.S. statement, they don't give many specifics on how much they intercepted. The official statement I have here from the U.S. military is that they intercepted, quote, some of the missiles. So again, this is going to be propaganda and information warfare. I just looking at the video footage from different sites, including multiple hits on the Nevatim Air Force Base, Israel's one of their top, where they have a lot of their F-35 fleet would normally be housed in the Negev desert. Okay. Now I do realize that Israel probably moved some of their F-35s to RAF. I think it's Akrotiri base in Cyprus. Okay, but not all of them. So there are reports from Iran that up to over 24 Israeli fighters were damaged in this attack. I've seen the video footage of the hits on Nevatim. I've posted some of these on my Twitter feed, and there's a lot of different footage from different areas and cities. So if you add up the aggregate, you're talking about hundreds of hits. So this idea that none of this was effective, this was very effective, but managing the public relations in terms of the embarrassment of this for Israel and the United States. Biden this morning, or I think it was yesterday, took to the podium and said he wanted a ceasefire regarding Lebanon. And when he was asked about the ground invasion, I mean, that's where the United States is total confusion. Who's running foreign policy in America? It's kind of embarrassing because it's not the president. And the president should have the final say on foreign policy. So the fact that both parties aren't too concerned about this, because nobody's really talking about it when it comes to the subject of Israel, maybe a little more with Ukraine and Russia, but with Israel, everything is hunky-dory. Give Israel what it wants in terms of bombs, bunker busters, all sorts of support, anything they need, they get, even to the detriment of the United States arsenal. Okay, so, but this is a huge problem in terms of decision making. I think this is this is a bad advantage for the U.S. right now because of the politics. Very bad for Israel because they were just doing their victory lap the last 48 hours after the assassination of a leading Lebanese political leader. Okay, doing their victory lap, and look what's happened now. Huge problems politically within Israel, and also,
You guys mind if I respond to some of the statements he's made? Because right now
let
he's
me just wrap
pontificating
it
and
up.
spewing out a lot of propaganda and
Yeah,
making a
well,
lot of false
let me
statements
just
about
wrap it
U.S.
up.
Army special forces.
You had your 10 minutes
Pat,
of time. Let me just wrap it up, and then
sure.
you can respond. Thank you, Matt. I think Matt. So you have two also mass shootings which took place moments before the Iranian missiles landed. Okay, and that is very bad in terms of internal Israeli politics. You have the safety issue. It's a nightmare right now in Israel. And I think you'll see a lot of people leaving the country. For one, I mean, it's not exactly the sort of paradise in the Middle East that it's marketed as at the moment. It's supposed to be the safest place in the world for Jews to immigrate, but it's not. Okay, and that's a problem Israel's going to have to contend with
Thank you.
domestically. So I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you, Patrick. Let's get the. I wanted to go to Eric, but considering Eric dropped, I'll go to you, Matt.
If just I could get 10 seconds potentially.
Yes, I'll go to Visegrad, and then I'll go to you, Matt, just after.
Just a quick update, not related to the ballistic missiles, but there have been shots fired in front of the Israeli embassy in Stockholm. The police are chasing a perpetrator, and this is the second time it happens in a couple of months. The previous time, the Swedish police announced that they had proof that the IRGC had hired local criminals to shoot at the embassy. So, second time it happens in a few months. That's all.
Really quick, can I go before Matt, James?
No, I'll let Matt go, and then I'll rotate. Matt, you could. The stage is yours for the response.
Appreciate it. Yeah. So as Patrick stated, he's a war correspondent. He's got like zero military experience whatsoever. And as a qualified member of the U.S. Army Special Forces, I'd like to just respond to a couple of his assertions or things that he said were actually facts of U.S. Special Forces taking place. Number one, inside of Gaza. You have zero evidence of that whatsoever. That is your thought and belief, and you have zero evidence of that whatsoever. You also said why you believe that the U.S. military is inside Syria, and I see your big thumbs down. But again, if you could provide a fact on it, I'd love to see it. Additionally, the U.S.
Are you
military
saying the U.S.
involvement. Hey,
military is not
Patrick,
inside Syria?
Patrick,
Are you
Patrick,
denying
Patrick,
the U.S.
Patrick,
occupation of Syria?
Patrick, for the love of God.
Just a second. He allowed you to speak. I'll allow him to finish. Thank you. Matt, please go. Sorry, it's a double.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, no, I mean, what he ended up stating was that we're essentially the Israeli government's outer ring of security over inside of Syria. That's not true at all. That's not how that works. That's not what's happening. We're not the Israeli government's outer ring of security. Saddam Hussein ended up hiding a bunch of chemical weapons out in the desert. Additionally, when ISIS, started to rise up and was over there, and we ended up going to get involved, is because of a bunch of Assad's chemical weapons were making their way out onto the streets, and we didn't want those to fall into terrorist hands like those of Hezbollah. But it's a little bit too late. They've already been running. According to the Israeli government, they've already been running some of those different chemical weapons facilities and transporting them around the region. So our goal has been able to, find and get rid of them over there within that region to take care of them. And is he sitting there laughing? That's fine. But, over 3,000 chemical weapons were in fact recovered from inside of Iraq. That's open source information. It got released.
You finally found
FOIA
Saddam's
request.
WNDs.
Patrick,
Wow.
are you done?
That's
Are
a
you
news,
done,
breaking
Patrick?
news.
Patrick, are you done? Can you
Matt,
shut up and listen to somebody else for 5 seconds, dude?
You interrupted him, so what do you
I'd love
expect?
to, Matt,
Yeah,
but this is
after
really
10 minutes.
Guys. As I said, no interruptions until he finishes. He interrupted you after a long time, asking if he could answer your questions.
James,
I
I'm
stopped
sorry,
him.
but this is so funny, James. You have to admit.
He is allowed to. He's allowed to have his opinion the same way you are. So let him finish his point. Then I'm going to Daniel to give a different perspective, a different vision from a military person too. So yeah, Matt.
Yeah, what's absolutely funny is a war correspondent trying to question
Matt,
an actual
no
special
personal
forces
attacks.
operator. That's what's actually funny. So yeah, there's no evidence of that taking place inside Gaza whatsoever. In addition to that, like trying to say that we have, been providing them everything that they need, that's absolutely not true. We held up weapons for the Israeli Defense Force when they were stacked up outside of Rafah. They were stacked up outside of Rafah for almost a month. We held up those weapons, and we continue to do that. We held up sales of F-35s and all sorts of other equipment to Israel in an attempt to push national policy on Israel. Biden administration hasn't had ironclad support, regardless of what they say. Some of the things he said are true. We have been supplying them with weapons. We have been supplying them with munitions. We've also been pouring a buttload of humanitarian aid into Gaza as well. We've conducted airdrops over inside of Gaza and several other things. So for him just sit here and assert that the United States government is just, along Israel's side over to commit a genocide as listed on his profile, I think it's pretty clear that he has a very biased opinion on this. And at least I state my bias, which is against radical Islam.
I'm not biased. I'm just saying the facts. And the U.S. didn't drop buttloads of aid into Gaza. You're doing a good job of pushing propaganda yourself, Matt. So a pat on the back for that. Well done.
Let's go to the perspective of Daniel. Daniel, welcome back from your interview. You were with us at the beginning, and since then we've heard multiple reports from both sides. So from the Iranian trying to say that this was in response to the deaths of Hassan Nasrallah, Haniya, and the IRGC general in Lebanon. At the same time, we've heard messages from the US that they're assessing the situation and deciding what to do next, but they are asking their allies not to retaliate directly to Iran in order to avoid a regional war. Moving forward, what do you think is the next steps for the US, and how do you think Israel would respond to that attack today?
Well, I mean, Israel was saying even before the last of the missiles had stopped falling that some of their Israeli Defense Force spokesmen said that there will be consequences for this. I actually just got off of my own show here where we were broadcasting live with the statement coming out of the Pentagon with General Ryder, where maybe my note here, where he said that it is. It is number one. We have the secretary also said, we had this ironclad commitment. We're going to continue on, but that there would be retaliation. And for this, that's what General Ryder said. So apparently they're going to do something. When he was pressed to ask, okay, is the United States going to fight if Israel retaliates, will we join them in the retaliation? And he was very vague on that and wouldn't specifically answer other than to say, well, if Americans are attacked, we definitely will, but we will for sure help Israel defend itself, implying that we would. I don't know if you have also mentioned it, but he also confirmed that 12 of those ballistic missiles were shot down by 2 U.S. missile destroyers, 2 Navy ships in the area. So we actually participated to some degree on shooting some of those ballistic missiles down. So I don't see anything that's going to suggest that we're going to back down from the supply or continuing to help Israel. I can't even imagine that with the scale of what we've seen, no matter what was actually destroyed, just all those missiles getting through, that Netanyahu wouldn't do something. And my personal opinion is that this has been his plan from the beginning. He wanted to spawn a response from Iran, and I think that there's a good chance they're going to go after some of the nuclear facilities inside Iran as a retaliation for this. And so I think that this is just going to go up the rung. Israel went up the rung. Now Iran's going to go back up the rung, and then there's just no telling where this ends. But it's just not good.
Daniel, just a quick question on this. We're hearing that, as you said, America participated in the defense. I read that Jordan participated in the defense. That's according to Israeli news that was posted on the Israeli Times. Sorry. And so when you've got the basic America participating in the defense of Israel, why is it Israel, then, when it comes to offense, isn't basically consulting America and then is doing like what it wants? How does that relationship work?
Yeah, well, I know how it's supposed to work and how it is working. And how it is working is you just keep having all of these officials. And I've obviously had Jake Sullivan, uh, uh, Secretary Blinken, and Pat Ryder all keep repeating this, and through Austin as well, this ironclad commitment. Everybody wants to fall all over themselves to talk about how we are going to guarantee Israel's ability to defend itself, which means anything they do is defined as defense. So we'll help them do all these things, whether it's supply ammunition or shoot down Iranian missiles. We haven't crossed the threshold yet where we attack something in Israel, and that remains to be seen. Because I bet we're going to try to avoid that if we can, but we're going to continue going down that path. And the answer is that Netanyahu is calling the shots. I mean, you just can't be honest if you want to suggest otherwise, because whatever he does, he gets by with it. When we say we want him to do the opposite, he does it anyway, and there's never any consequences for that. And I just would love to see him stop that, because listen, if we get drawn into a war here, there's some huge secondary issues involved here. We don't have the ammunition I don't even know if we have enough ammunition to give Israel for their Hezbollah attack here on the ground, if it gets into a sustained combat, and still helping Ukraine and still sending stuff to Taiwan, and to keep our own arsenals up. We just don't have that much equipment, and we need to be telling everybody to take an appetite suppressant, because we could otherwise find ourselves in a situation where we don't even have enough interceptor missiles, for example.
So we have got a statement from two people. One is Iran's leader Ali Khamenei, who said, "With God's help, the blow of the resistance front on the decayed body of the Zionist regime will become more severe and painful." We have this statement from the Israeli foreign minister, who said, "Iran has crossed the red line, and the state of Israel will not remain silent in the face of the Iranian attack." We also have a statement from Abu Ubaidah from Hamas. I'm not going to read all of it, but basically, he is congratulating Iran for the response to what happened in the region. So that's the latest news in that regard. Let me pass the mic back to James.
Thanks, Suleiman. Sorry, James, just one quick point about the nuclear thing, because it's very important. May I just very
Yeah,
short?
sure.
Yes, Mr. Davis, you pointed out that Israel may go after Iranian nuclear facilities. I can assure you that that won't happen, because not even a single Iranian missile was fired even close to an Israeli nuclear facility. So Iran knows where Dimona is, and Iran did not go after that, because that would be an indication that Israel might retaliate for that. So Iran carefully played its hands. The attack has so far been non-lethal, which I assumed. The only assumption that I had was the hour of the attack. But so far, no reason for Israel to attack Iran nuclear facilities. I don't think the U.S. I think the U.S. would actually not allow that if the Biden administration has any power controlling Netanyahu, which they don't. But I think when it comes to this, it directly involves the United States of America, and I'm seeing almost zero chance of Israel going after nuclear facilities. Thanks.
Well, I hope you're right. If I can just say it, I hope that's exactly what happens. And I also concur with your assessment here that Iran looks to me like they went out of their way again to avoid continued escalation because they don't want a war, and they were very careful in what was targeted. So if there weren't any casualties, that was amazing. But if they demonstrated that they could definitely penetrate the Iron Dome, so there is indeed every reason not to escalate this further. But I don't have as much confidence in that you do that Israel won't strike into a nuclear facility anyway. We'll have to wait and see, though.
So I'm gonna go to Voice, who's more on the field because she's in Israel and has lived that attack. Talking about that possible response, the potential messaging that's coming out of the Israelis, and that fear from a lot of people of a regional escalation. What is the next steps for Israel? Do you think they're gonna go? How do you think they're gonna go? In which direction?
I think, like Amir here, that this is not an attack in a scale that requires a response on nuclear facilities. I also don't think that would be the case. Not that it wouldn't be smart from Israel's side. It's just I think with the scale of the attack, it won't require a reaction in that field. Now, you guys were talking about Isfahan earlier, and that the rockets were launched from there. Maybe some, I don't know, but I saw an image from a soccer field in Karmanshah. I don't know if maybe Amir knows what photo I'm talking about, that you see like the missiles are flying in the background of the football stadium. And if the
Yes, Voice. Actually, just I'm not going to interrupt
sure,
you. Just the missiles were fired from mostly all cities, Qom, Shiraz, Esfahan,
okay,
all over the place. Because in each major city, there may be a missile facility. The locations are disclosed, but yes,
exactly. So,
missiles
I
being
thought like
yes, yes,
once
yeah.
I saw
Thanks.
Kermanshah, thank you for that, Amir. Once I saw Kermanshah, I thought, okay, so the IRGC has a lot of assets there. It has a missile launch facilities. It had the Shahid Soleimani missile base and the Shahid Nujah air base, for example. These are legitimate targets. Now, James, I think for your question, for example, targets that would be maybe legitimate to this scale of attack is, I think, it will justify more of the launching sources that we talked about in Karmanshah and Shiraz and all of those. There are also strategic ports like the Bandar Abbas, for example. And I think that it will be considered in the target bank in this round. But again, we cannot know. It can also be like something very mild for Mayfar, as we saw last time, but I don't think so. Now, I heard Patrick speaking earlier, and he was speaking about like Israeli air bases are destroyed, and something about there was an internal.
I didn't say any Israeli air bases were destroyed. You're misquoting me, Voice.
Okay, so I
Sorry to
misunderstood. I
correct you. I'm sorry
apologize.
about that. I'm
No
sorry.
problem. If I'm glad to be wrong. Look, but I mean, you talked about the internal problems in Israel, and you mentioned there was a shooting attack before. Describing it as a shooting attack is very cute, but it was actually
But
infiltrators from the.
that's
One
how the
second, Patrick.
mainstream. That's how the Israeli press
But
called it. Yeah.
Patrick,
Thank
one
you.
second.
Thank you.
Pa- 1 second. I'm reading the Israeli press. It's not how they reported it. So
Yes,
first
they
of all,
did.
it was, well, I'm sorry. I'm in Israel. I read Hebrew. I read Israeli press. They haven't reported that way.
I'm sorry. I'm just
And
getting
if
your English press. I'm sorry.
um,
Patrick, please
it's
let
totally
Voice
fine,
finish the
James.
sentence. Please go.
Yeah, it,
Go.
it,
I
it
mean, the
doesn't
problem
matter.
is that the problem is that when someone mentions someone else's name, then they obviously want to respond. That's happening a lot
Yeah,
recently.
okay, so he can respond after I'm done, just like everybody else did with him. So I didn't interrupt. So anyway, what I was saying is it was a terror attack. It was pre-planned. There was in parallel also a terror attack on Herzliya in a hotel that had Jordanian workers in it. They were all activated by the IRGC. This was not like a school shooting shooting or a mall shooting or anything like this. This was a deliberate terror attack. So if you want to be exact on the fact, it's fine to speak at stuff in confidence, but I don't think you know better than people on the ground. Now, actually, I'm not a supporter of Netanyahu. I think I've been speaking in this space before, and everybody know that. But actually, if you look at the recent polls, the government is actually becoming more unified. They are bringing also new members to the cabinet, which have different opinions and have different way of thinking than Netanyahu. So actually, the state is actually more unified since the Beeper attack. So I don't know about what internal conflicts and whatever and shooting events and whatever it is that you were mentioning. You need to be exact in what they are, and they were terror attacks, and they were coordinated with the Iranian attack as well.
Thank
I
you,
want to go
voice.
to Patrick to respond. And Patrick, if you want to make a comment on two things about the Iranian attack being a terrorist attack, and the second comment, if you, I want your thoughts on the fact that just because someone's an Israeli in the ground of Israel, that gives them more, their claims more veracity. Like, what's your thoughts on those 2 points? And then do I
Well,
What is this bullshit? Seriously.
well,
Like, it's
I think the point, if I'm wrong, Suleiman, correct me, but I think you're,
Is that how you describe what you said, Vera? Voice? Go ahead, finish your
I
point.
think what Suleiman's trying to say is that Israel is a very heavily propagandized society. You can tell that by
so
looking
if
at.
it's coming from Israel, it's propaganda, and if it's coming from you, it's
No,
Oh, you're allowed.
facts.
No
Oh,
one said that.
I
James,
don't
James, am I not
understand.
stopping the interrupters now?
I'm trying to
Voice.
explain to you, voice, what Suleiman meant. Am I wrong, Suleiman? Is that the direction you're going at? Or
Yeah, I mean
there's
that was
different
that was my.
countries
I mean, I
report
asked the question, but
different
I can
things.
see your response
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, different countries will, press will report different things. The English language press coming out of Israel or the international wires is calling it a mass shooting for the first, I don't know. Now maybe it's a terrorist attack. I haven't checked during the space since we've gone live. So thank you for that, voice, for updating us on that. I think that's brilliant. And besides that, whether it's a mass shooting or a terrorist attack, it's a security issue. And people are just, being at war against all of your neighbors in the region. You're going to have problems guaranteeing the security of the people living there, and that is the big sales pitch for Israel when it's basically recruiting people to come and settle from around the world. That's the main point I was making, and that has an effect on politics, does it not?
So, voice, if you can answer those claims.
I feel like this discussion is not very necessary, and I see that there are a lot of hands. I mean, just because of internal politics, but I think there are problems with the politicians everywhere. The thing is that there is a lot of mistakes. People think because in the Middle East, people tend to see leaders as something religious or something symbolic or something they go blindly after. The case in Israel is different. Israel has a very known history to hate its leaders. Let's put it that way. I mean, we do rebel against, we do go on the street, we do demonstrate, we do say our opinion. I mean, it's not like that this country is like blindly adoring Benjamin Netanyahu, because that's not the case. So I think the way you're seeing Israel, you try to maybe implicate stuff that you know from neighboring countries and think that this is how things work around here, but they don't. I think anytime in a time of war, there is conflict between politicians. I don't think Israel is any different, any special in that case. I mean, and that's all I have to say. But I'm on the ground. I know there was a lot of lack of unity before this war, and even with the hostages deal, you probably saw the images of the demonstrations in the streets. But it's still not on a level that is like, as crazy as you describe it. It stops in the talks and in a demonstration and in the interviews. It doesn't continue to any riots or rebellions or military coup or all this kind of stuff that we see in neighboring countries. It's very different in Israel.
Voice, I got a question for you. A genuine question, actually, and I'll tell you, like, from our perspective, like the way we see it, and so I want to know what the Israeli perspective is on the ground, because obviously in a country the thought is different to outside. But from our perspective, it seems like after the upcoming or current invasion of Lebanon, in terms of what's happening right now, we're not hearing much about the hostages. It seems like that the hostages have kind of took a backseat. Is that how it is within Israel or not?
That's a good question, actually. If you look at the media, then yes, it seems like Lebanon is taking more and more of the headlines. Obviously, what's happening in Iran, the center of gravity obviously moved, and with it also the media attention on what's happening in the northern border right now. But in the public talks, in the topic of the day, people obviously are still talking about the hostages. It's just that I do agree with you that it seems like it went off the headlines a little bit, definitely.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's what I think. James, who are we gonna go to next?
So I just had one final question that was asked from someone in the audience to Voice. So Voice people heard a lot of reports about bases being hit, planes being destroyed. What information is on the ground regarding the impact of that attack at the moment?
Look, we still don't have a direct hits, and also no one will publish direct hits because we don't want to give the IRGC information where their missiles have landed, and this is why it will also not be public, especially when it comes to air bases. But I think one of the speakers said before, and he was right, that a lot of the F-15 and F-35s were moved not just to Cyprus, but they were moved from the 3 air bases that were targeted. I think there was a lot of talks in IRGC media that the Khitim base, which is the air base where the bombers went with the elimination of Nasrallah, was also hit. There is no such report at this point. At this point, most of the missiles got intercepted, many of them even outside of the Israeli airspace, and many of them are here. I think it's just the first wave, James. I don't think this will just be it. To be honest, I think there will come a second wave and a third wave, maybe through the proxies as well, and not directly from Iran. And let's see what will happen there. I mean, the way to infiltrate the Iron Dome is very difficult, especially on the situation. And I know that the IRGC narrative right now is that there are major hits and a lot of sites were hurt, but I saw the missiles flying above me. I saw 100% interception, but that was just in the area that I'm in. I do know that a Jordanian civilian and a Gazan
But just on that
civilian.
voice, surely,
Sure.
I mean, you're talking about in terms of where you could see, but is your position that there was 100% interception? Surely that's not your position, right?
It's only in my area, so we're talking about a small, tiny, maybe like 5 to 10 rockets max that I could tell you. But obviously there are falls in open fields. Obviously there are hits somewhere. There are shrapnel damage as well, which is always happening in cases like this. But right now the only casualties that I saw reported was a Gazan worker in Jericho, and also a Jordanian civilian that got hit by a rocket that was flying over their airspace in Jordan. This is all I saw by now. But maybe if there will come more reports about damage or something, I will make sure to update you guys.
With the Jordanian one,
Yes,
we need
and
more information on that because we know Jordan helped intercept as well. So that would have probably caused certain missiles to basically fall or wreckage to fall and so on and so forth. So I guess we need more on
Exactly.
that.
Yeah, everything can happen. I mean, I saw the picture. The missile looked pretty whole, but it can also be a malfunction. It can be a navigation problem. It can be an interception, as you say. It can be a lot of things. I don't have information about that, but maybe if you